Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to Around the Kingdom. Elo, hello.
Hello, Trace. Coming up on the fastest UCF show around. UCF with a now 3-game losing streak. What is there to look for the rest of the year? And is the starting quarterback for UCF in 2025 on this roster? Is that what we're left to play with? That and much more coming up on this edition of Around the Kingdom.
Before we get going with all of that, Elo, let us welcome in the third member of our team. He is Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF. Keeps an eye on the clock, keeps us on our toes. Adam, hello.
Gents, good evening, good evening, good evening. Another edition of Around the Kingdom. Guys, I have bad news. I almost gave up this show because I thought it may be too much for me, but I decided I'm staying in here.
Oh, we're glad you did. You mentioned it off the top, Elo. Bear clawed by Cincinnati. Knights dropped their third straight, fall to 3-3, 1-2, and it feels like at the halfway point, the season is slipping away.
Slipping, you could pretty much kiss it goodbye, Trey, some would say. Listen, that was a rough watch on Saturday. That was not an artistic football game, and certainly the offensive struggles. We're going to get to the quarterback situation a lot on this show, but still, it didn't matter who the quarterback was. There's still issues to that offense. Nobody outside of Kobe Hudson seems to be a viable option offensively. Johnny Richardson fumbling twice early. It's just – and again, it wasn't like Cincinnati was like this juggernaut. This wasn't a Luke Fickell-led Cincinnati team, just a disappointing 60 minutes to sit through.
Yeah, it is one thing to lose to a legacy Big 12 school, but this is a fellow American school, right? And UCF, got by them last year in Cincinnati. No such luck. Don't take UCF as the favorite. Again, in Cincinnati game, that UCF is the favorite, and they dropped that. And you mentioned it. Running game could never get going. We're going to delve into the quarterback situation. The season's fallen flat, and it's amazing over just a couple of weeks. This team was once 3-0, now 3-3. Deja vu all over again in the midst of another losing streak, second year in the Big 12.
It is amazing. 3 weeks ago, we're talking about big noon kickoff, hosting Colorado. Hey, if they win that game, they might be ranked top 25. All the ESPN FPIs had them as a favorite to win the Big 12. Boy, that seems like 100 years ago, doesn't it, Trace? It's unbelievable to fall in this quick of a – I'm still kind of trying to figure this out, how quickly this kind of changed. But I think this team has been exposed for all the flaws they have, whether it be the shortage of receivers, offensive line, and even though the defense did make some plays, boy, they couldn't get off the field on third down, Trace.
They could not. That part of the problem for the Knights in this one, but you mentioned it, offense, and nothing going quite like the Knights had thought just 3 weeks ago, Elo.
No, it wasn't. And of course, Gus Malzahn, prior to the Cincinnati game, making a move, benching KJ Jefferson, Captain KJ Jefferson, I might add, starting EJ Colston. That came was interesting for the youngest quarterback ever to start at UCF. You saw, of course, a 2-quarterback system at UCF. None was KJ Jefferson. Trace, what was your reaction when you heard that KJ Jefferson was getting benched? And did you agree with it?
Began to leak out prior, heard it a couple of days beforehand and was shaking my head in disbelief. Not so much because KJ Jefferson has wowed us in a couple of games at UCF, but the move to EJ Colston, which did not last long before moving to Ja'Cory Brown. No, but maybe it's interesting, right, that perhaps still the best quarterback, the most experienced quarterback, is the one that has gotten benched. They needed to do something, but you could see some promise in Ja'Cory Brown, even EJ Colston, but still 13 points back-to-back games for the Knights, and the offense has just hit a wall.
I agree. I'm stunned at how this has not worked out for KJ Jefferson. So I certainly understand. Gus Malzahn said he wanted a spark, but I would have waited another game. I know it sounds crazy, but I think they could have won that game with KJ Jefferson. He has experience. I don't think Cincinnati was a juggernaut. And here's the thing. When you make a move like that, that's it. You can't go back to KJ Jefferson. You're done with him, and it didn't work. And I think what it showed, Trace, while the quarterback certainly has been an issue this year at the quarterback position, it's not the only issue that this offense has, Trace. It just goes beyond the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, Elo. Would they have won this game? 19-13 losers to Cincinnati with KJ Jefferson. I think we'll be talking about that question for some time. Well, new era, EJ Colston or Ja'Cory Brown. who do you see continuing on as they head to Iowa State, and why do you think so?
I think it'll definitely be Ja'Cory Brown. The question to me is, do you just play him the whole game, or do you still sprinkle in E.J. Colson? And I think that's the interesting dilemma. The thing that was so confusing to me, Trace, maybe you could expand on this. So Gus told the broadcasters in the telecast on ESPN2, and I think they mentioned it to you guys in the postgame, that E.J. had actually, the last few weeks in practice, moved all the way up to number 2 on the depth chart. But yet, it seems like Ja'Cory Brown is the more prepared quarterback with that experience that he had at Miami. So I'm just kind of confused with that because, if you say somebody's the number 2, it makes it sound like he's the better quarterback. But yet what we saw Saturday looked like Ja'Cory, right, at least right now, is the better quarterback. So I'm not sure what the message there is or the direction is for the quarterback position.
So number 1 quarterback got benched. Number 2 got demoted in the same game. So perhaps Gus and crew don't quite have the eye for quarterback talent.
Now, Ja'Cory Brown did make some plays. He had some moments there, threw for over 200 yards, ran the ball pretty well. Trace, is Ja'Cory Brown the solution or a Band-Aid right now to the UCF quarterback situation?
I think Ken, you know how I like to hedge on these things. I kind of see both. I think it's a stopgap measure. I think they felt like they needed to do something. It smacks of desperation. But if they give him some time, Elo, maybe he can work some things out over these next 6 games and give you some hope that he could be a contender for the job in 2025. And I know we talked about whether it be EJ or Ja'Cory. I'm never a fan of a 2 quarterback system, but I think there's a role for EJ going forward just to mix things up.
Well, let's be honest. I know this. I don't know. You probably won't agree with this, but I think in a lot of ways now you're playing for 2025. And I think one of the goals you have the rest of the year is identify who is your quarterback for 2025. And is it on this roster? Is it Ja'Cory Brown or E.J. Colson? To me, that's where you go. I don't think K.J. Jefferson you could go back to, as I mentioned earlier. He seems to be quicker than K.J. Jefferson, clearly. So maybe
so are you.
Listen, the whole K.J. Jefferson mystery, I can't wait till a couple of years from now when Adam and Mike interview him on a Sons of UCF podcast special. We get all the details inside. But
talk about your 5-game run as quarterback.
Right. Like that's going to be must watch. Listen there. But I think Ja'Cory has an opportunity here to get a grasp as the 2025 here if he plays well down the stretch. We'll see.
Well, you got, 6, 7 nights opting to preserve their red shirt. Here's a question for you. Do you burn EJ's and play him as much as you can over these final 6 games?
If he's your best quarterback on the roster and you believe he's your future for 2025, yes. And here's why I say that, Trace. Do you really believe E.J. Colson or college athletes today will play 4 straight years at a school?
No.
So what do we, you know what I mean? Like, to me, if he's the guy, if he's ready and the quarterback for next year and beyond, you play him and you get him that reps and you get him the experience. I don't worry about losing a year of red shirt because, again, I think the days of quarterbacks playing 4 straight years, 5 years in the same school are obsolete.
Yeah, definitely so. And, Coach Malzahn was asked about monitoring the redshirt status, and he says, yeah, they're on top of it, but maybe they weren't as on top of that when Mikey Keene opted not to play a couple seasons back, didn't want to burn his. So I think you play EJ as much as you can. I think you give both of these guys, you said it, what's the goal here? I think all this talk of a bowl game and all that, this is about identifying talent that you can carry into 2025.
No doubt about that. And I think the big question now is, Trace, is the 2025 starting quarterback for UCF on this roster right now?
I suppose it depends on how Ja'Cory Brown and E.J. Colson handle themselves over these next couple of games. But with Gus's tendency to want to dip into the portal, maybe this failure to identify a quarterback and gambling wrong on K.J. Jefferson, maybe they will then look inward and say, hey, we've recruited a lot of good guys, right? On paper, at least, right? Maybe it's time to unleash them. In both E.J. Colson, who everybody speaks very highly of, maybe you have a talent that if you invest in him, here's a question, develop him, right? Maybe you can develop him, then maybe you do have your quarterback. But I find it hard to believe. It's always what's behind door number 2. There's always something better, and it's in the portal. And I think that has not shown itself to be the case over 2 seasons.
I think it almost has to be in this roster because can you really go back to the market? Can you go back and try to spend money on the quarterback position. They just got burned. It appears now you could argue, hey, John Rice Plumlee didn't burn you, but that took a while too. So I think if you're UCF, if you want to compete in this era of college football, you do got to develop your players. You can't go all in on the portal. I'm not saying that you can't go into the portal. I think they've made some good moves in the linebacking position, but a position like the quarterback, you've got talent. AJ Coles is the most coveted recruit UCF's had in recent memory. Let's see what he can do.
That's right. All right, Elo. First half ends with the Knights 3-3. Give us some positivity here. What's your favorite moment of the first 6 games of the season? Dig deep. Go back to New Hampshire. There's got to be something in there that you enjoyed.
I would say probably, obviously, the TCU finish, right? The TCU comeback. I mean, can you imagine they don't win that game right now, Trace?
Oh, boy.
I mean, in which really you could argue they're a false start away from losing that game.
KJ Jefferson's best performance as a Knight.
Well, that's what's crazy about this. This guy helped produce that comeback 3 weeks ago, put up 35 points, and now he's out of a job 3 weeks later. It's the most insane thing I've seen, but that's clearly the highlight of it by far.
It is the highlight. Can I give you one, though, an isolated moments? It was Colton Boomer's extra point. They gave the Knights a 1-point lead after having had blocks before that. And the excitement of jumping up and down and celebrating, a big moment for him now, a former Knight. So we're in sync on that one.
Hey, Grant Reddick had a good game. I feel good about the kicking game. Just saying. I feel very good about the kicking game. All right. That was the highlight. Trace, what's been the low light of the first 6 games? And please, we only have a minute.
It's a 1-minute segment, Elo. I'm going to go back to the Cincinnati game. 13-play drive, 93 yards, longest drive for the season in yards. And it ends, as so many UCF drives do, not scoring a touchdown in the red zone. The Knights settle for a Grant Reddick field goal. I think that epitomizes the first half of the season and the struggles.
I mean, I think the low light is the Florida game, in particular, those first 2.5, 3 quarters, even the whole game, really. I mean, just the way the offense performed. At that point, I think everybody knew that this team was toast to just not, to go at a, turtle pace offensively, to not really give Florida a fight against the Florida team that's, granted, it's played a little better recently, but that one was disappointing. I know people might say the Colorado game because of all the hype and the $4 million, but you could have salvaged that with a better performance against Florida, but they didn't. But listen, there is no wrong answers in this segment. You can go a lot of directions.
And I left it out, but I still owe my nephew, who attends the University of Colorado Boulder,
when are you paying him?
270 push-ups. Yeah, I'm going to do it when I see him so he can record it and lord it over me. So, all right, always a highlight, no matter the season. Let's bring back in Adam and time for our silly game.
Gentlemen, thank you. Before I get to that, don't forget we were brought to you by our good friends at the Cure Bowl, December 20th at Camping World Stadium. The matchup is Orlando versus Cancer. You can join the winning team right now. Get your tickets, curebowl.com. Enjoy the festivity. It's a great game. Some stuff pregame in and around the stadium again. December 20th, Camping World Stadium. Curebowl.com is how you join the winning team. All right, gentlemen, this week, simple fill in the blank. I'm going to give you a statement. You fill in the blank for the question. Elo, this first one is for you. The best transfer of this class so far has been blank.
This class, I would say Pace.
Yeah. Same question. Yeah, Deshaun Pace. Early Deshaun Pace. I don't know that we've seen as much of him the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
All right, Trace, I'll start this one with you. The most surprising thing about this season has been blank.
All of the changes that Gus Malzahn made over the course of the offseason not working.
Other than, the Gus hasn't gone after Trace yet, but it is early, still in the season. Maybe that's what we got.
Just halfway point, Elo.
I heard that.
I'm generally, as the guy who wrote a column that I thought KJ Jefferson would make UCF a contender.
Didn't you call him a Heisman contender on this very show, or
he could be?
Those words in your
clearly,
mouth?
that was 20. I didn't realize he would, be twice the size or whatever happened. I can't wait for that Sons of UCF podcast down the road to listen to what happened. That's clearly the biggest disappointment. I'm stunned, stunned. Maybe the most stunning thing ever in following UCF now since the mid 1998.
Elo, this one starts with you. Blank should be calling offensive plays.
Darren Hinshaw. I like him. I think Ja'Cory Brown, one of the things that I liked, his mechanics looked better than it did at Miami. I think that's Darren. I personally I was fine with last year. I know Gus may have taken over at some point during the year, whatever, but just let Darren try it. What's the harm?
Anybody but Gus.
Are you
You
applying?
can have any coordinator, any coach calling plays except Gus Malzahn. Bring in anybody.
All right, fair enough. And my last one, a little bonus. This is not a fill in the blank. This is really just kind of a yes, no. Trace, I'll start with you. Does the fan base right now need to hear from Terry Mohajir?
I don't know that there's anything Terry Mohajir could say at this point that would make the fan base feel better. So no, I think he's made a wise decision to be quiet.
I agree with Trace. There's nothing to be said based on the last 3 weeks. I mean, it's you're just trying to throw you. I think everybody. Don't you feel like everybody is stunned that they're at this position? I don't think anybody there involved saw this coming.
No, nobody.
Well, hopefully you two aren't stunned. Do we have a whole nother 14 minutes to go in the program?
All right. Thank you, Adam. All right, Elo. But the Knights just 3-3 on the season. They can rectify. At Iowa State. Top 10. And then return home with BYU. But BYU entered the same time. This is a hard stretch for you to turn things around when you're not entirely sure what your quarterback situation is.
No, it isn't. You can make the argument right now that Iowa State and BYU have been the two best teams in the Big 12. You got to go to Ames, Iowa's in the 60s. They are stacked defensively. They have a running game that's rushed over 200 yards the last 3 weeks. And then you play a BYU team that's just dominating teams left and right. I feel bad for the idiot that picked BYU in their draft game. Who was that clown?
Who was that?
I don't know, but that needs to be looked at, Trace. But this is rough. I mean, this is the discouraging thing. You're 3-3. I think we just got through the soft part of the schedule.
Yeah. This is where you hope you can split the pair, steal a win somewhere, and Gus Malzahn pulls that game out that you expect that, he's going to get one that no one thought he could get. Is it at Iowa State? Can you steal it at home against BYU? If you can split, I'm not trying to turn a whole season around, but if you can be 4-4, it certainly beats the alternative.
I think Brett Yormark's hoping that Iowa State and BYU take care of business against UCF the next 2 weeks for financial reasons.
Yeah, he's not interested whether UCF pulls an upset.
Not anymore. All right, Trey. So as the Knights sit at 3-3, a lot of displeasure, a lot of frustration towards Gus. Can Gus win this fan base back at all this year?
Now, you know what? The flat performance against Colorado, followed by the most important game for the majority of the fan base, beating Florida, embarrassed in both, said offensive coordinator Tim Harris. No. Now, if they get a series of wins, and we're talking 9-3, we're joking around 3 weeks from now, how things were turned around, certainly that could win back some people, but it's hard to see that. So I don't think there's anything.
What if they were to knock off an Iowa State or BYU with Ja'Cory Brown or an EJ Colson looking good at quarterback? And now all of a sudden you're thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe we're
do it again, then. Do it again. String together some wins. One game won't be enough. It'll make everybody feel better for that week, but that won't be enough because we'll expect that they come back home from Iowa and lose to BYU because there's not confidence in the offense and confidence in the coach.
Well, it's we'll see. They're a heavy underdog, by the way, 12-point underdog at Iowa State. So
maybe that's where they need to be. All right, you talked about goals, Elo. Yes. So, yes. Bowl game? Anything else? What are your goals now for the next 6 games, maybe 7?
Find your starting quarterback for 2025. I don't care find your 2025 quarterback. Find out, too, who's your core for next year. Find a number 2 receiver. Play everybody. Somebody step up. Play them. Who is part of this group for next year? I think you got to identify your core next year starting now. That, to me, what you're playing for. More so, listen, if you make the bowl, great. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world unless preferably you make the Cure Bowl. That would be the obvious. If you're UCF backyard game, get an extra home game out of it. But play the young, find out who your young guys are that you can build this team around next year.
Yeah, but that's sort of waving a white flag of retreat on the season, and you don't get the sense Gus Malzahn and this staff want to say that at a 3-3 start that the season is over. And maybe they haven't spent as much time developing those young guys. Maybe those young guys they don't feel. We don't see practice. We don't know. Maybe those young guys aren't ready for prime time, and they feel they have the best players out on the field, players that have not performed well over the last 3 games.
But a lot of those young players got booms on social media, Trace. Booms.
Yeah. There's not going to be as much excitement about that, but still a fan of the Sandhill Cranes here. So
find your quarterback. Things will make you feel better if you feel better about your quarterback position at the end of the year. Hey, some other teams in the Big 12 have good quarterback play. Like Kansas State with Avery Johnson beating Colorado this weekend.
Was that it? It was an exciting game. Did you stay up late for that one? That was an exciting game.
No doubt. It was a great game. Over 3 million viewers watched that game. BYU keeps on rolling, as did Iowa State at West Virginia. Your thoughts here on where we're at in the Big 12?
Cam Rising not going to play the rest of the season. I think that shakes up whether Utah is still a contender. I think the way we phrased it earlier, BYU and Iowa State, are they the 2 best teams? Go back to this past weekend. Arizona State picked last, beats Utah, picked first. Anybody can win, which gives you hope that UCF could win on the road at Iowa State. But it shows you how nobody knows anything going into the season, because a lot of people thought UCF would be a contender too.
The irony is you can make the argument that right now the UCF's 2 best, easiest games, quote unquote, or best chance to win are the 2 games that we thought in August would be the hardest. Black Friday against Utah. They're not going to have Cam Rising. They're going to have Zach Wilson's brother play, which is ironic. UCF played Zach Wilson at the Boca Bowl in Josh Heupel's last game a few years back.
Forgettable. Very forgettable.
And then Arizona, who has obviously got thumped by BYU. They got thumped by Kansas State. Nobody can name their head coach. You can't. Go ahead. Name him.
Arizona's coach? Brennan.
Yeah. What's his first name?
Coach.
So my point exactly.
Bill Brennan.
I don't think that
Adam will correct us.
Yeah, I don't. In fairness, I don't remember his first name either. Maybe that's the problem.
Brett Brennan.
Brett Brennan. There you go. Jed Fish he's no Jed Fish. Those might be UCF's.
I would have remembered that one.
By the way, Big 12 needs to root for Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State. If those 3 teams keep winning, Big 12 might actually be a 2-bid league in the playoff among those 3 teams.
All right, Elo, pick up a little time here. Schedule draft. I was certain with Cincinnati. I get nothing on Cincinnati, and I don't believe any of us had UCF winning at Iowa State. Nobody has UCF
Anybody
winning.
take BYU?
That comes back. That's where I'm going to get back into the win column, or get into the win column with a UCF win over BYU. But shut out. So far, you lead. You got 2. Adam's got 1. I got nothing, Elo. Next topic, please, sir.
Oh, that is a rough deal there for you, sir. What are UCF's best bets for wins during the second half of the year? Can they get to 6 for bowl eligibility?
Oh, the quest for 6, Elo. Any home game, though, UCF has frittered away what was once a strong home field advantage of the bounce house. Imagine that they'll be excited for the space game. So there's an opportunity there. You talked about the change at quarterback with Utah. Maybe you can steal a game on the road at West Virginia, which does not seem very good. But I don't think that Arizona State game. What idiot picked that game as a win for UCF? That would be me. Maybe it's BYU, Arizona, Utah, West Virginia. Maybe. I don't feel good about it.
I would say if I had to rank them, I would have Arizona number 1. Again, I think they got some issues there. I think Utah without Cam Rising, who knows? Black Friday, maybe you could steal that game. That would be my second.
Who's coming to that by the end of the season? Fox looking at that going 8 o'clock. We gave 8 o'clock away to this.
Tim Brando might be like, the iron is unkind. I won't make it the trip to Orlando. But that might be their 2 best. Maybe they pull an upset against Gus Tens, right? You pull an upset. Maybe you pull an upset against Iowa State or BYU. Continue that trend.
The red shirt count is 7 now. What will it be by then? Anyway, let's talk about props, Elo. Let's check in on Randy Pittman Jr. 0 targets against Cincinnati. Perhaps one of your best players. You don't have a second wide receiver, so let's just not target him at all. He is at 12, Elo, through 6 games, a pace of 24. That over-under is 24.5. It's going to be close. Okay. You came off the top of your head with two props in this one. Over under KJ Jefferson passing yards 175. I went with the under. I won.
Congrats. And then Grant Reddick 1.5 field goals. He ended up getting 2 field goals. 2
good. You're really good at picking the number on the prop. All right, what do we got this week?
This one is Ritbull. Who do you take, folks? This is for golf fans. This reminds you of Tiger versus the field. This is Kobe Hudson versus the UCF field as far as who's going to have more receptions in this game at Iowa State. Who you got, Kobe or the field?
I am going with the field because there'll be just 8 completions. Kobe will have 2. RJ Harvey will have 2. So I'm going with everybody else because they'll just shut down Kobe.
I will take Kobe Hudson gladly there because who knows how many other completions they'll be able to have. But I'll go with him.
All right, see if you can get 3 minutes out on this topic, Elo.
Hey, Olympic sports, everybody. Volleyball dropped a 5-setter to Colorado on Sunday. Catch a trend there, Trace? Everybody loses to Colorado except women's soccer.
Yeah, I'm wisely not wagering on any of the other sports against Colorado. I didn't say a thing to my nephew about this stuff.
Smart decision on your part there.
Would you at least give volleyball that they've been close? They do go close with a lot of these. They're not getting killed, right?
No, they're not. Anything? But I mean, they're young. I mean, the problem is this was a huge jump. This ain't the American, and they don't have that marquee player that you could depend on to get you through the finish line. They just don't have that right now. They were without Ava Armour on Sunday in the loss to Colorado. Women's soccer
undisclosed, right? As to why she was
undisclosed injury. That's correct.
So there's a chance they swept West Virginia recently, and they go to West Virginia. So
they better win that because they got top 10 Kansas coming into the venue on Saturday.
Kansas is good. They battled Kansas and Lawrence though. So
yeah, I wouldn't expect much there. Women's soccer had a draw with Colorado. Their goalkeeper had 14 saves, the most saves a UCF goalie's had since 1998. Perez Watson, the youngster from Costa Rica. They host top 10 TCU on Thursday night. Oh, baby. And then Oklahoma.
You got to protect the home. You got that absolutely is a must.
I'm going to do my part. I'll be there Sunday calling the match against Oklahoma State.
Oh, are you? You're back on the call. Good for you.
They need they got to change it up, right? And then men's soccer, they get back Luca Dorado on Sunday. They actually get Juan V. Munoz back, but they lose to Marshall 2-0. You wonder
Marshall's good. Marshall's good.
Top 10's good. They got to make a run here, and they're probably going to have to make a deep run in the conference tournament. You hope now that you've got Munoz back and you got Dorado back, they have the capability of making that run, but time's running out on the men's team.
Yeah, not many games left. They are, though, best positioned based on RPI of perhaps postseason play. All right, time to bring back in Adam with a little knowledge, I think, maybe including the Arizona head coach's name.
I've got a few nuggets for you, gentlemen. First, UCF now 4th in the nation in rushing behind Army, Navy, and Boise State at 268 a game. Fell to 4th. Falling every week in a row. And you mentioned 4th down, Trace. 9 of 16 on 4th down. Did you know that UCF is 113th in the nation in third down conversion percentage?
I didn't know they were that good.
Only behind TCU in the Big 12. You guys talked about Jacurri and EJ Colson. My only comment there is, oh, good. Another QB controversy. You guys talked about KJ Jefferson as well. Here's the thing to think about. What else could we have done with that QB money if we had spread that around to somebody else that can maybe, these days in dollars and cents is there's too many corrections there, so I'll leave that one alone. Iowa State ranked 9th. BYU is ranked 13th. Elo, I'm sure he loves being called Zach Wilson's brother. His name is actually Isaac Wilson. Trace, you are correct. It is Brett Brennan. That is the coach of Arizona. Fun fact today from Brett McMurphy, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark turned down an opportunity to interview for the Live Golf CEO job. So he was being talked about, and he turned that one down. And last but not least, the only team worse than UCF right now may just be West Virginia, whose coach said, hey, we lost, but did you have fun? So maybe that's a winnable one for UCF.
Thank you, Adam. All right, one more thing before we go. Elo, we're a basketball school now at UCF, and welcome back. UCF men's hoops home Sunday in an exhibition against Florida Gulf Coast at 4 o'clock, parking and admission free. But a good thing here, donations are going to be collected throughout the game to benefit Team Impact, an organization that pairs a collegiate program with children facing a serious illness or living with a disability. This year's UCF signee, 12-year-old Jonah, who lives with cystic fibrosis and gastroparesis. So welcome Jonah to the team. All right, Elo. Look for new episodes midweek every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel and on the Sons podcast feed. For Eric Lopez and Adam Eaton, I'm Trace Trylko. Thank you for joining us for this week's Around the Kingdom.